Greetings, beautiful. It's Jo again. Are you ready to talk about intermittent fasting in all its variations and glory? Because there's a lot of different ways you can fast. And cross-posting these onto my Facebook, and friends and family are dipping their toe in the intermittent fasting water, or wondering if there's different ways to do it than what I'm doing. And yeah, there's a lot of different kinds of intermittent fasting. That is the short and sweet answer. Now, I do alternate day fasting, which is the expanded version of the 36-hour fast. I've talked about that a lot, of course. There are variations on that. There are shorter versions. It really just depends on you and what you want to do and how it's going to work for your body, your system. If you're on meds, what does your doctor say? Because especially if you have any sort of health issues whatsoever, you want to talk to your doctor and get their opinion about things. Variations include things like daily fasting or time-restricted eating. Now, with daily time-restricted fasting, most people actually do this at some point just by skipping a meal, running late, not feeling like eating today. You have now fasted because you didn't eat in a time when you normally would, and your body reached that point where it was processing things differently. This is a very sustainable one, they say, and it's just about eating a little bit within a shorter window daily. Eating your first meal still, but eating it a little bit later. Eating your dinner a little bit earlier so that your fasting time overnight is just a little bit wider. A very popular type of fasting is the 16-8, and that is a daily fast. And all that really means is that you have an 8-hour food window every day, and then you fast 16 hours out of the day. So very commonly that might mean that somebody is skipping breakfast and then eating lunch and dinner, no midnight snacking, no late snacks. They're just cutting one meal a day out of their daily schedule and having a longer period where they're not eating. But say, for example, you always eat breakfast and you're happy eating earlier in the day, then you are welcome to switch it around and have breakfast and lunch and then skip dinner time. The most important thing is to keep a reasonable calorie count, keep a nutritious calorie count, but still don't let yourself feel deprived. This is not that kind of calorie restriction. Don't undereat too extremely. It may take longer to get to a goal, but your body's less likely to plateau. And it doesn't hurt if you switch it up a little bit, because your body can get too used to an eating habit, and that's another place where plateaus tend to happen a lot. Another variation is the 5-2. Now, basically what that means is out of the 7-day week, you eat 5 days, and then you fast for 2 of them. Another variation on that, though, is where you don't fast 100%. You just do a very restricted calorie on those 2 days. For example, 500 to 600 calories, or just this percentage of your food calories in general, but you eat normally the other 5 days. This is one that a lot of fasting gurus and those who know don't seem to care for, though, but it's better than nothing. And mostly people don't tend to put those fasting days back to back, so it's not like eat 5 days, don't eat 2, unless that's just what you want to do and it works for you. An example fasting schedule is this. So basically there are 2 variations of the 5-2, and that is the one where you eat 500 to 600 calories on your fasting days, and the other is where you don't eat at all. So it's eat normally, 24-hour fast, eat normally, 24-hour fast, eat normally, eat normally. So it at least restricts your calories for 2 days out of the 7, which, as long as you're not massively overeating on your food days, and fasting doesn't tend to lend itself towards that. When they've done studies on it, they don't see people making up the calories on their food days. They just get back to normal. But personally, I don't care for the eating the smaller portion of calories. I'd rather not have anything at all. And it definitely, if you're having a really hard time but you really want to try fasting, that might be the way to start, though. You eat just enough to get by. Or, just for example, I have people who are doing variations of the known fasting schedules because, for example, they want to fast, but they have to take meds every morning. And these are meds that you're not really supposed to be having on an empty stomach. So, an example fasting schedule that somebody I know is doing is food day. They're fasting overnight just naturally, of course. They get up early, have breakfast, have their meds, and then they don't eat again until breakfast time the next day. So it at least does get them to a solid 24-hour fast, which does still have a lot of health benefits. They are hitting ketosis. They are hitting heavy ketosis. They are starting to touch into a good autophagy phase. It is still good for inflammation in the body. It's a variation on what I do, because alternate day fasting, or 36, is it's a little bit more hardcore. It's not for everybody, but even in that version, there is the way where you can just have a few hundred calories. I don't really care for that one, and if you are, keep it to things that are not too carb loaded, not too sugary. Don't get your glucose spiking. Don't eat foods that are going to take forever to digest and get out of your system anyway. I mean, personally, if you're going to do that, I recommend sticking with proteins, just based on what I've seen and read and heard. I am in no way a medical professional. This is just information that there are getting to be studies out there about. The 36-hour fast is, you can still have breakfast, but then you go through that whole day, but then you go through that whole morning, and then you have dinner. So, I mean, that's a variation where it's a day and a half of fasting. So you start with food, you end with food. Alternate day takes it to that very next level, and that's where I'm not eating at all after dinner, and I don't eat again till breakfast the very next day. And that really works for me, because I do it so regularly. It did take my body a few weeks to really get used to the new patterns and start to accept when it was going to have food to process, so that it processed it more smoothly. And of course, discovering what foods did not work for breaking the fast. I am still working on shifting my own personal eating patterns to eat healthier as I go. I don't want to be deprived feeling, which would make it very unsustainable. So if I want a little bit of ice cream, I have a little bit of ice cream. If it's a burger day, or I'm eating with friends, eat what you want. I do try to keep it to a reasonable number of calories, but I am working hard to eat a little bit more well-rounded on my food day, because I'm a carbaholic. I like pasta and potatoes, and I don't eat nearly enough veggies. It's a little bit easier right now because my garden's going and my asparagus is up, and I can work things like that in. So that's a nice little bonus, and it makes it eating a little bit more well-rounded. Like last night, I worked really hard to get my calories starting earlier in the day, nice, nutritious. I'm trying to teach myself that if I want my pasta and I'm not having anything that would interfere with it, to try to do it earlier in the day, more at lunchtime instead of dinner, because at least my body processes all those carbs before it's already bedtime. Last night I had some red beans and some fresh grilled asparagus, and so it was a high protein, high fiber meal with some good veggies, but it wasn't real carby because I had my carbs at lunch. So I'm trying to make adjustments and switches where I can, without doing it all too fast. I want it to be sustainable for my eating patterns. I don't want to reach that point where I feel deprived, but I want the nutrition too. So within the fasting world, there's a lot of terminology that you start to hear, like OMAD, 2MAD, warrior diet. A lot of those are just variations on and abbreviations of. Just for example, there's 1 meal a day, which is OMAD. That is basically fasting all day, having one significant, nutritious, filling, large meal, and then you're back to fasting. Versus warrior diet, which is basically a 4-hour eating window and 20 hours of fasting. So it gives you a little bit more time to ingest a decent number of calories without saying you have to do it all in one meal. Some people just would have a hard time getting to that many calories in a single meal, whereas snacking over 4 hours or having a couple of small meals over 4 hours might seem more sustainable to them. 2MAD being 2 meals a day, which is pretty much just a variant, as far as I can see, of 16/8, because 16/8 is skipping a meal so that you have your food window being 8 hours, and 2MAD being only 2 meals a day, whichever two you want. So, I mean, they just seem to be variants of each other to me. Another variant is just spontaneous meal skipping. So just wherever you skip a meal and just cut back those calories for the day. You don't make up those calories in another meal. Your body just goes a longer stretch without food. Remember, when you are fasting, there are some very specific rules to getting a full effect. Very importantly, you don't want to take any calories if you want the full effect. What that means is you can have things like black coffee, no creamer, no sugar. There are sugar substitutes that are debated. I'm not a fan of sugar substitutes in general, so I haven't really messed with that at all. If it's not black, I'm not having it at all. I mostly just have water. I have had black tea a few times. Black tea is okay. Green tea is okay. You got to look real careful if you want any herbal teas, though, because a lot of those have fruits and things in them that might have enough calories to knock you out of the fast. Whereas if you're doing the limited calories, like 500, you're not really truly, in my opinion, hitting a truly fasted state. It's just a variation of limited calories and caloric restriction. But caloric restriction in a variation like that at least is enough to where your body is randomized and doesn't get too used to things, because that is the key with a lot of it, and it seems to be why a lot of people plateau so hard. They calorie restrict so extremely, and then their body gets so used to it, and then their body hits full starvation mode and goes, oh, so yeah, I'm not going to let any calories go because that's clearly not a good idea. You're never giving me food. And your system is not going to accept that so well in the long term. It may make a difference short term, but it's not going to be sustainable from what I see. So, I mean, even as an alternate day faster, I'm trying to randomize it. I have that very strict eating pattern, but every few weeks, particularly, I'm starting to work in a 2-day fast, which equates to usually around 62 hours for me, 62 to 65-ish. I have considered trying to get to 72 hours, which not eating for that long isn't really a big concern for me. By the time you hit that many number, I mean, the only time I have been truly hungry, hangry, starving, just chugging water left, right, and center, trying to not be hungry, was when I did a 62-hour fast. Then I had my food day, and then the next fast day, I was so hungry. So this last time I tried having 2 food days to follow up the 2 fast days, and I did not experience that extra hungriness. But the 72-hour landed me coming out of the fast at a very odd time. So my next option was to just take it even longer and come out of it the next morning like regular. And I just wasn't in the mood to do it at that time. So I ended out about just shy of 66 hours, which worked really well, brought me out of the fast just a couple hour or two later than my normal coming out of the fast time, but it was a whole day extended basically. There are time frames which your body reaches a different extra level. 48 hours seems to be one of those Goldilocks time frames to shoot for. 72 hours is another Goldilocks time frame to shoot for. Anything after that is an extreme level that I'm just not ready to dip my toe into. There are definitely health benefits for going longer, but at this point, the benefits do not outweigh the negatives outweigh the benefits. I do still have to work. I do still have to do my exercising, and I am still doing my walks even when I'm fasting, as long as work and schedule like that doesn't interfere. I have not been doing my yoga as much as I would like to. That is just my yoga buddy is out of pocket right now, and I'm not so great about doing things like that alone. I hope this information helps some of you. There's a lot of information out there on all of this. Do some Googling, look at some YouTubers. I've got a couple of new YouTubers that I've been looking at. One is actually a doctor, and she has a lot of different information and different takes. I'll link her below. Feel free to click the notification bell, subscribe, comment below if you have any questions. I will be happy to include links to my research or answer anything that I actually know the answer to. But remember, I am not a medical professional. I am just a somewhat new alternate day faster who's been learning. But I've done the research and I have it. So have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you later. Greetings, beautiful. It's Jo again, and this time we're talking about variations and different kinds of intermittent fast. Can't talk. They're just cutting one meal a day out of their repertoire, which, whether that means skipping breakfast or skipping dinner, is completely up to you. I just can't.